My manipulative, power-hungry aunt tormented my family for years. So I took her spine from her. My estranged father, who had been living several counties over, was pretty much out of the picture by the time my parents got their divorce when I was 9 years old. Due to financial hardship, we were forced to live with my aunt in the nightmare of a household we would soon find ourselves in. My aunt married into a rich family, had 3 kids, and eventually caught her husband having an affair. It's a huge scandal. She gets the house, the kids, and a fat payout from the family attorney. This is important because my aunt didn't do a damn thing in her life to earn her money, her house, her lifestyle, or basically anything. She was born poor along with my mom. Under her household, she was drunk with power. Years of therapy have allowed me to recognize that certain people, when in a position of power, get a perverse pleasure in ordering others to do their bidding. She was the strictest of authoritarians in every possible way you could imagine. Chores had to be completed by an exact specific time. Vacuuming by 3:45 p.m., dishes by 3:55 p.m., laundry days for my mother and his kids were Tuesday and Thursday 5:35 p.m. to 7:55 p.m. If it was still running, she would shut the power off for the 2 units. As we grew older, her own kids opted to stay with their father for full-time custody, and she had them on weekends. Even they couldn't stand her when she was in charge and in the house. As time passed, she got them less and less, opting for alternating weekends as high school activities took precedence over time with her mother. For my sister and I, the large 6-bedroom house was not ours for the taking. My mom had to pay rent as well, and 1 bedroom was all that she could afford on her salary. We had to share a bedroom until my 2nd year of high school. All the while there was 1 spare unused bedroom available at all times. My aunt needed this for guests when they stayed over. Not one guest stayed there in the 10 years I was under that roof. Finally, the church we attended told my aunt to give up the spare bedroom so my sister can have her own room, as it was unhealthy for 2 teenagers sharing a room together like that. That infuriated my aunt because someone told her what to do in her own household. My sister and I got the brunt of her wrath. As my mom's salary was tapped out, my sister and I had to do extra chores like mowing the lawn, trimming the shrubs, and cleaning the pool, which we could no longer use without her being outside watching us. Soon my aunt's behavior was becoming more and more outrageous and disconnected from society. For example, she had always snapped her fingers when she wanted to get someone's attention, but it was getting far more frequent, and she would blow up into a tirade if either my sister and I didn't obey. Her own kids repeatedly tried to tell her that the stuff she was doing was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually they wanted nothing to do with her outside of the home. She was a tyrant there, and repeated intervention to get her to see the folly of her ways would fall on deaf ears. That's when I finally snapped. All through high school, I had no confidence as a person. I was weak-willed and growing ever distant from friends and society. I say this in all truthfulness and fear, that had circumstances continued the way they had been going, I could very well have taken a gun to myself, or worse, to others around me. I was that bad off. I had just graduated high school and started my first semester of community college. I'm 2 weeks into my classes attending from home when my aunt drops a bomb on me. "You owe me money for this month's rent, the same amount for next month's rent as well. It is the 27th after all. You're an adult now. You're out of high school and working now, so you need to pay rent, the hell?" I blew a gasket as I yelled back. "You can't just suddenly decide to charge me rent just because you feel like it. I need 30 days notice, I have rights." My aunt yelled at me with some BS excuse that she had discussed this with my mother and it was decided that I needed to pay my own rent now. In some miraculous backbone move, I yelled right back at her, "If I'm an adult, then treat me like one and talk to me about rental agreements. I'll start paying you rent in 30 days starting the 1st. I turned my back to her and walked away with my fists balled tight. I was furious with anger, but I walked away. My aunt saw my fists from behind and screamed bloody murder that I was going to attack her. No, I wasn't. She snapped her fingers at me repeatedly on my tail to get my attention, but I didn't turn around. I needed to cool off and clear my head. As I turned the corner, she grabbed my wrist hard, yelling, "I'm not finished talking to you." I threw my still balled up fist forward, keeping with my stride to break her grip as I hadn't stopped my momentum. This caused her grabbing arm to slam hard into the corner of the wall that I had just turned into, and while stumbling back, she fell down 2 flights of stairs. She screamed in pain, but I left the house and took off. The aftermath of that incident was that my aunt called the cops on me in an attempt to press charges. She was taken to the hospital, suffered a fractured wrist, and was put in a cast. The cherry on top was that she had paralyzed her spine after falling down the stairs and was now bound to a wheelchair. Her story changed every time she told the cops what happened, while my story was spot on every time. I can still recall that moment down to the smell in the house, where I was facing, the working and non-working light bulbs, etc., forever ingrained in me. I was kicked out of the house and I couldn't visit my sister or my mom there at the house again. Fine by me, as I didn't want to see my tyrannical crippled aunt ever again. I was happy to meet my mother and sister at the local diner or outlet. We could be ourselves there and not hostages to the Happy Wheels tyrant in our own home. Years later, my mom wised up, got out of that abusive relationship with her sister and moved out on her own. She got a temporary nice place, invested wisely, and with the help from the church, got help getting a place of her own. In 2009, after the housing crisis, she bought her own place that she could never have afforded on her own prior to the market crash. Despite this, I waited for years for another opportunity to get back at my aunt and leave her in ruins. I could not forgive her for what she did to my mother. How she kept her in financial hardship for a decade while she sat on a bank account full of cash and assets. Or when she forced my sister to pay for damages because the water heater burst. My aunt and mother had been away one weekend, leaving my sister at home, and she didn't discover the flooded rooms for hours. My aunt's reasoning: it was her responsibility to watch the house. I guess it's not the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain the water heater before it goes. Let's leave that upfront $5,000 financial burden before the flood insurance kicks in on a 16-year-old girl. Her spine, while a nice touch, was not enough. It needed to be intentional for me to be satisfied, and I wanted her to lose it all. 2 decades later and I still had no contact with my aunt. But I did keep in constant contact with my cousins. While I'm not going to divulge what I do for a living, I can say that I work with and for the government. I've worked my butt off getting to where I'm at today. I'm known for being truthful, wise, and giving good advice when asked. Because of this, I often talk financially with my cousins. All of whom are money smart and are doing well for themselves. They often then relay this information to their scheming mother, who has no mind for business and investments. By this point, all that money she got from her house sale, her divorce settlement, her previous investments was pretty much gone. I spent years planning on the perfect trap, and it took a long time to prepare everything to make sure everything appeared right. I let slip to my cousins about some future real estate plans near my aunt's new area of living. I told them it may be worth a lot more because of future development taking place in the area. All of that was true and backed up by what was in the newspaper and new construction signs that newly appeared on Google Maps at the time. The rest was fabricated by myself, backed up by actual information I looked up on real estate websites and on projects I was working on through my work. My cousins relayed this information to my aunt, and a few weeks later, she started making phone calls to real estate agents trying to buy lots of land in the undeveloped and terrible area of her new house. Over the course of a few months to a half a year, she spends $500,000 of her last remaining savings on land, hoping it will pay out when the area around it gets developed in the upcoming years. However, what she didn't know was that the city didn't have any plans to develop in those immediate areas. In fact, analysis showed that building in those areas was poor planning and would cost the taxpayers 2 to 3 times as much, as the land was not environmentally sound. It was best to build 6 miles away. So, 2 years after my aunt purchased that land, it was still worthless. Despite this, she refused to sell the land unless she got it for at least the same price. That's when sweet karma hit her in a way I couldn't possibly have foreseen. My cousin informed me soon after that the value of the land decreased significantly because it was not environmentally sound to build anything commercial there. It became zoned for commercial use, so currently 3 of the 4 blocks of land she purchased became farms filled with dead weeds next to eyesore abandoned buildings or industrial complexes. Nobody could build on it, and nor does anyone want to buy it. She's stuck with it and there's nothing she could do about it. Best part is, my cousins have absolutely no idea that I set them up for their mother to take the fall.